Hi guys, hope you're all well. I thought I'd do a video because a few people have asked me about my job and how I got into it. I've done a few videos about my old job. I used to work in security for about 23, 24 years and managed quite a few small security operations in the UK. And then I moved into the defence sector and became a pro shooter. And people were like, well, that's a pretty weird job. It sounds very unusual. Some people, when I tell them, they're kind of like, yeah, sure, whatever. They don't kind of believe you. And I just thought I'd break down what that's all about, how I got into it, and some of the myths that might be surrounding that kind of work. So I was in the security industry, as I mentioned. I got out of that because it got taken over. It got regulated. And after the regulation, the regulation is kind of a bit of a misunderstanding that people thought that would bring in more professionalism, better quality work, better standards, all that kind of thing. And what was actually happening was huge companies like G4S and Serco were lobbying MPs and petitioning for regulation because regulation would allow them to sew up the industry. So things like ISO compliance and licensing and all these different regulatory things that they brought in made it not cost effective for small companies like mine to keep functioning in that industry. We couldn't afford to meet all the regulatory requirements. So that meant that all these huge companies came in and took over. They got all the lion's share of the contracts. And then because they didn't have a clue what they were doing, they knew how to get the regulatory stuff done, but they didn't know anything about doing security work. So they would then subcontract the security work back out to companies like mine that could do the security work. And unfortunately, they would then take like 50% of the money to sit in the middle and do nothing. So we were still the guys on the ground doing the work. We had all the experience and the knowledge. We were the ones getting attacked and beaten up, etc., and taking all the risk. And we were now doing it for 50% of the money. So I thought, you know what, I've had enough. I'm not getting into that work anymore. And I basically stopped and started doing a university degree. And I'd started doing a degree in health science because I've always been interested in the body, biology, and specifically in terms of health training and all that kind of thing. I do a few things on here about physical training and stuff, as I'm sure you guys are aware. I was really interested in epidemiology, which is the study of illness and disease over large population groups. And then I was interested in virology, which is obviously the study of viruses and how they might spread and all the types of issues that they may cause. And suddenly a job came up. I was keeping my eye on the job market and I just did a random search for jobs in ballistics and a job came up. And you might think, well, why is this guy searching for jobs in ballistics? So a bit of backstory on that. When I was very young, I was really, really interested in shooting, started shooting air rifles, when I was literally 7 or 8 years old, messing around with them. And then my father sort of took me because I think my mum was quite concerned at the time. She was a bit worried about, rifles and shooting. She thought it was like a health and safety concern that I might hurt myself. So my dad, he was a very responsible guy. He was a prison officer. And he sort of took me to a local shooting club, which was a 2.2 long rifle competitive club. And I started doing competitive 2.2 long rifle, progressed in that, did really well. As a young guy, probably sort of 12, 13 years old, I started shooting at quite a high level. I was averaging scores in the sort of 98s, 99s, which is incredibly good for that age. And then I was shooting at sort of county and country level. So, pretty decent. And I kept doing that. I got into a few other shooting disciplines as well, but my mainstay was the 2.2 stuff at the time. Then I got, it heavily into security work. So the shooting kind of dropped off. And of course, being in, late teens, early 20s, I was really interested in girls and all the stuff that went along with them. So the shooting bit kind of died off, as did most of my other hobbies. I just spent time talking to girls basically. And then over time I got back into shooting and I really got into the long range stuff, long range rifle, And what I was really interested in there was the kind of mathematics behind it, and also developing specialist loads. So I had a real interest in pushing, calibers further than they should normally be pushed. So I was shooting my own loads in 308 Winchester out to, 1,1500 meters, stuff like that. At the time in the UK, that was fairly unusual stuff. People weren't sort of regularly doing that kind of thing. I began to build a bit of interest. I had a website that I used to stick all the sort of information and data in, got to know a few people in the industry, and that was that. Anyway, this job came up, and I thought, you know what? I'm studying, I want to get into health science and whatever, but I would really love to work in the ballistics sector. It is something to do with shooting. So this job was in the defence industry, and it basically involved developing loads for long-range rifles, which was right up my street. That's what I'd been doing for a few years myself. So I knew I kind of had the knowledge behind me, but I thought, well, there'll be loads of like defence industry professionals that must do this kind of work all the time. So I had doubts that I was going to do very well, but I thought, hey, it'll be a good experience, and I always try and go for interviews no matter what, because even if you think you're not going to get the interview, it's normally a great teaching experience. It builds your confidence. It will always hold you in good stead for the next interview you go to, because you'll learn a little bit from the last one, even if you don't do well, and you can take that along to the next interview. So I'm a big believer in doing that. And I went for this interview. It was quite a long way away from where I lived, and I did pretty well. They asked me quite a lot of questions. I knew all the answers to the questions. It was all regarding, load development and stuff like that. So I knew my stuff, and they seemed pretty impressed. And then part of that was I had to go down the range and prove that I could actually shoot, because this job was twofold. They wanted me to develop loads, but they also wanted me to test the loads, and they also wanted me to demonstrate the loads to people that would be clients, for law enforcement and military. It was quite a responsible position, because I would be having to demonstrate these small arms and the loads I developed to guys that were, serious professionals. And it wasn't just random infantry guys, it was specialist user groups, sniper teams, SF groups and stuff like that. So it wasn't something I could sort of blag. Anyway, went and did the shooting part. No problem at all. Passed that with flying colours. They were very impressed with that. And I didn't think much of it, because I thought, oh, there must be like hundreds of people that have gone for this job. There's no way I'm going to get it. So I just had a good day, enjoyed myself. The guys that I met were really nice. And I just thought, yeah, that would be a great experience. Anyway, a week or so later, I get a phone call, and sure enough, they offered me the job. They said, you were great, by far the best candidate we had. You ticked all the boxes for us. When can you start? So that took me back a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to move my entire household to a different county, and that was pretty daunting at the time, but they were very kind. They offered me a place to stay, so I could sort of move up there temporarily, go back home at the weekends, and then I would in time move up completely. And they offered me a pretty decent package to do that as well. So I ended up moving up there, staying up there temporarily, and working in this defence sector. And I was doing exactly what I'd been doing at home. I was developing loads for long-range rifles, and then going out, testing them, proving them, demonstrating the loads, demonstrating the rifles, etc. And that all went very well indeed. Now, people think that it's like some sort of Jason Borne movie, or I'm, like rolling around in the mud and doing all these crazy things. It's nothing like that. I'm doing very, very sort of scientific data collection. I'm developing loads scientifically. I do get to go down ranges and test them out, of course, but I'm testing them in a very controlled manner. I'm there shooting myself, but I'm not sort of running about and going mad with rifles or anything like that. It's a controlled prone shooting style. Yes, we do test at very long ranges, so that's really good fun. I enjoy that. But in between those times, there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of science behind it. It's not as simple as just doing the shooting part. So it's not all fun games and excitement. There's a lot of good times, but there's also a lot of hard work involved. Then gradually I moved up there, moved the house and everything, was doing very well. And then gradually from that position, I moved into tech sales, because obviously we have to sell things. And I saw a niche for me that the sales guys that we had were very much commercial based, and they would always sort of call one of us in to support them on a technical level, because a lot of the customers would want technical information. So I saw an opportunity there and pushed for that, and ended up being the tech sales guy. So I still do a lot of the load development. I still get involved, still do a lot of the demos and shooting, but a lot of the time I'm going to shows, I'm traveling to other countries, talking to clients about our products, showing them what these products can do. And of course, it really helps that I actually develop the loads and shoot as well, because I know everything about that product then. And when the client asks awkward questions, I can come back with the correct answers. And these clients are highly technical, they're users, they know what they want, they know the questions they want to ask. It's not something that you could blag and just sort of give them generic answers. They want some, seriously technical information back from me. So I'm in a good position there that I can feed that information back. And that's fairly unusual in the industry, because you tend to get quite a cutoff between sort of commercial salespeople that are, wandering around in suits with a clipboard and saying everything's the greatest thing on earth. I'm very transparent and honest. I give honest answers. I give honest technical answers. And I think the clients really appreciate that. And they're able to get out of me what they might not be able to get out of some of the more commercial people in the industry. So that won me a lot of friends quite quickly. And I also sort of dressed a bit differently. Like I dress pretty much like I dress on here. And I think a lot of the clients kind of appreciate that I wasn't turning up in a posh suit and kind of looking like someone that didn't have a clue about the products, as it were. So that all boded well. It's reasonably paid, it's certainly above average. I'm not rich from it or anything, but what I do get is a really passionate job that I really love doing. And I've got a lot of friends now in the industry, people that I really trust and count on. And they're a great bunch, basically. And a lot of people ask me, well, how can I do that? How can I get into it? I don't really have an answer for that. A lot of this was the fact that I saw the job. I had the experience already. I could answer the questions. So if you've got that experience and you are someone who, whatever you're doing, if you've got some sort of niche experience, then definitely put yourself out there, and try and get those jobs, even if they're few and far between, or you think you might not get it. It's worth having a go. I don't see a huge amount of jobs for pro shooters in the industry. There's a few going in America, but certainly in Europe, they're quite rare. And if they are up, you're really, really going to have to know your stuff. It's no good turning up and saying, I shot a rifle 6 years ago at my uncle's garden or whatever. That they're not going to be interested. You need to really, really know your stuff. If you want to get into that line of work, then you probably should start shooting, getting an understanding, in the end developing your own loads. But you're talking about quite a few years of experience to gain there. So it's not going to be a short-term solution. You can't just go on a training course for 3 weeks and then suddenly become a professional shooter. That you're going to be up against people that have been doing that for many, many years and know far more than you could ever learn in 2 weeks. So that's really frowned upon in the industry. You get occasional people turning up saying, I've been away for a couple of weeks on a course. And a lot of those guys have come from the CP world. So they've gone over to Eastern Europe and done some sort of Mickey Mouse firearms course in Lithuania or whatever. And they come back and say, I'm qualified in all types of firearms. And frankly, everyone laughs at that in the industry. It's not a thing. It might be something that people in the CP world respect, but even in that world, there's 2 levels in the CP world. Now, I used to work a bit of CP back in the days of unregulated stuff, and there's 2 levels. You've got the sort of Mickey Mouse CP that stand outside Katie Price's hotel room and catch her shopping for her and all that and walk around with her kids. And then there's people like ex SF guys who are working for seriously wealthy people who are under threat and do need actual proper guys looking after them. And those guys haven't gone on a 2-week training course. Those guys are, years and years of experience in special forces. And previous to that, they've got military experience that extends beyond special forces. They were in infantry or whatever. These are absolutely serious guys. So if you turn up there and start blagging it and saying you've done some sort of training course for a few weeks or even a few months, or in the defense industry, you start saying that, those are the kind of guys you're going to be talking to, and they're going to laugh you out the door. Even for me, because I'm not ex-mil, I get a bit of a hard time sometimes talking to some of the guys, and it takes me a little while. They talk to me about, what they want to know about, and it takes me a while for them to go, oh, this guy's actually got some useful information despite the fact he's not ex-mil. And it takes them a while, to get a bit of rapport with me. Whereas I'm sure if I had been ex-military that I could have done that a little bit quicker. But I just work at it, keep being honest, being transparent, and talking to these guys, giving them all the answers that they need. And in the end, you get there anyway, and they respect you for what you know. Any of the guys that I speak to in that world that are serious guys that actually know their stuff, a lot of them are incredibly humble, and they're like sponges. They want to soak up as much information as they can. So if they speak to someone who's got technical knowledge that they don't have, they want to get that technical knowledge off you, and they're more than happy to hear it. A few of the guys that I've met in the industry that are kind of arrogant and talk down to you, to be honest, they're not very serious guys. They're not well respected in the industry, and they're kind of blaggers themselves. They're kind of Walter Mitty type characters, and they don't last very long. So the industry is very, very good to work in if you're legit and if you know your stuff. And if you're a blagger, you're kind of quickly found out and booted out the door. I hope that helps people kind of understand things a bit. I haven't got any sort of magic solutions for people who want to get into the industry. I get quite a few emails from people who are ex-mil saying, how can I get into that part of the industry? And I tell them exactly the same thing. If they've got skill sets that they've learnt in the military and they can bring those skill sets into the job, then go for the jobs. You've got as much chance as anyone. But just the fact that you are ex-mil isn't going to necessarily pave your way, because military guys don't tend to learn about load development. They might not know about the science of building ammunition. A lot of them have never shot a long-range rifle in their lives, and popping off rounds from an SA-80 and then moving over to something completely different is another ball game altogether. The same as I don't pretend I know about military tactics for infantry guys. I don't roll through doors doing CQB, etc., because that's not my thing. So they would be very good at that. They've all had years of training in that. I don't know anything about it. So it's as far removed for what I do for them as vice versa. It would be as far removed as me trying to say that I knew everything about infantry tactics, which I absolutely don't. I haven't got a clue about half of those. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. I hope that sheds some light on the situation. Any questions, chuck them down in the comments. Some things I won't talk about for obvious reasons. I'm not going to start going into loads and proprietary formulas and releasing information on the things that I'm doing, because that's up to the company. That's their IP, their commercial property. But more than happy to talk to people about the kind of job it is and what kind of things you do, etc. Take care. I'll catch you all soon. Have a good one.